In 2010, a film hit theaters that changed horror forever. Not because of monsters. Not because of gore. But because it showed us something we'd never seen before, a real place. A place called The Further. And once audiences saw it, they couldn't unsee it. But here's the question nobody asks. Where did James Wan get the idea? And why does the astral plane in Insidious feel less like fiction and more like a warning? When James Wan directed Insidious, he wasn't just making a scary movie. He was building a system. A mythology. A world that felt so real, so structured, that audiences left theaters convinced it actually existed somewhere. And that's the genius of it. The astral plane in Insidious isn't random. It's not chaos. It's a place with rules. With geography. With architecture. There are red doors and dark hallways and creatures that move with purpose. The film shows us that there's a threshold between our world and somewhere else. And that threshold can be crossed. Your body stays in bed. But your mind. Your consciousness. It can walk into the further. This idea didn't come from nowhere. James Wan drew from decades of paranormal research, folklore, and something darker. Actual accounts from people who claim to have experienced astral projection. The mythology is so detailed in Insidious that you can actually map it. There's the real world. Then there's the grey space. That's the bridge. And beyond that is the further. The eternal dumping ground for lost souls and things that were never human at all. What's terrifying is how the films treat it as geography, not fantasy. Elise Rainier, the psychic character, doesn't treat the further like it's made up. She treats it like it's a place you need a map to survive. And that changes everything about how we watch the films. We stop thinking this is fake and start thinking, what if this is real? The astral plane blueprint became so successful that other filmmakers copied it. Insidious created a new language for horror. Not ghosts that haunt you in a house. But a parallel dimension that you can slip into without even knowing it. Your body is asleep. You're vulnerable. You're alone. And there's a world full of things waiting for you on the other side. But here's what's interesting. Elise doesn't just explain the further. She explains it like she's lived there. Like she's studied it. Like it's real science dressed up as supernatural horror. She talks about astral projection like a doctor talks about anatomy. That's not accident. That's deliberate filmmaking. The opening act of Insidious hooks you with a question. What happens when someone gets stuck in the further? The rest of the trilogy answers that question. But each answer leads to a bigger, darker question. And by the time you reach the end of the trilogy, you realize something unsettling. The system Wan built feels less like fiction and more like documentation. Most horror films rely on one thing, the sudden shock. A figure jumps out. A noise explodes. Your heart jumps. You scream. It's over in a second. But Insidious doesn't work that way. And that's precisely why it's more terrifying. The real terror in Insidious is slow. It builds. It creeps. Josh Lambert falls asleep and doesn't wake up. Not because he's dead. But because he's somewhere else. His body is there. His wife can touch him. But he's gone. He's in the further. And the longer he stays there, the more lost he becomes. That's not a jump scare. That's a nightmare that doesn't end when you wake up. This is why audiences had a completely different reaction to Insidious than to other horror films. People didn't just jump and then laugh it off. They couldn't sleep. For weeks. Some people reported actual sleep anxiety after watching it. Because Insidious attacks something fundamental. It attacks sleep itself. The one place you're supposed to be safe. The one time you're supposed to rest. When you're asleep, you're defenseless. You can't run. You can't fight. You can't control anything. Insidious takes that vulnerability and weaponizes it. What if your consciousness could leave your body? What if you got lost out there? What if something followed you back? These aren't questions with quick answers. These are questions that haunt you. James Wan understood something about human psychology that most horror directors miss. We don't fear what we can see. We fear what we don't understand. We fear the spaces between things. We fear losing control. And Insidious puts you directly into all three. The further is dark. It's confusing. You don't understand its rules. And Josh can't control where he goes or what he encounters. The creature designs in Insidious are disturbing, but not because they're ugly. The red-faced demon is terrifying because it feels purposeful. It's hunting Josh. It knows him. It's connected to him somehow. That's worse than any random monster. A random monster could attack anyone. But this thing is after him specifically. It's personal. It's intentional. And then there's the twist that makes it all worse. Josh isn't the first person in his family this has happened to. His father experienced the same thing. So did his mother, in her own way. Insidious isn't just about one person getting trapped. It's about a curse. A bloodline. Something genetic, maybe. Or something spiritual. Something you can't escape because it's written into your DNA. This is why Insidious spawned a trilogy. Because one film wasn't enough to answer the questions it raised. And that's the mark of true horror storytelling. It doesn't end. It just evolves. Each film digs deeper into the further. Each film reveals something new about the mythology. And with each revelation, the stakes get higher. The psychological horror works because it's grounded in real human experience. Everyone knows what sleep is. Everyone has nightmares. Everyone has felt paralyzed by fear, even if just for a moment. Insidious takes those universal experiences and stretches them into something cosmic and terrifying. That connection to reality is what makes it stick with you long after the credits roll. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Because understanding how Insidious works makes you appreciate every frame of what comes next. Here's where Insidious becomes dangerous. Because it's not just making things up. It's taking real science and turning it into horror. Sleep paralysis is real. Millions of people experience it. And when you understand what's actually happening to your body, the films become even more terrifying. During REM sleep, that's the phase where you dream, your brain does something strange. It paralyzes your muscles. Every muscle in your body except your heart and lungs goes offline. This is called atonia. And it exists for a reason. If your muscles didn't paralyze during dreams, you'd act them out. You'd thrash around. You'd hurt yourself. So your brain shuts your body down to keep you safe. But sometimes something goes wrong. Sometimes your mind wakes up while your body is still paralyzed. You're conscious. You're aware. But you can't move. You can't scream. You can't do anything. You're trapped in your own body. And that's when the hallucinations start. Sleep paralysis hallucinations are common. People report seeing shadows. Seeing figures standing in their room. Some feel a presence pressing down on their chest. Some describe a demon sitting on them. Some see red eyes in the darkness. And here's the unsettling part. These descriptions are consistent across cultures and centuries. People in Japan see it. People in Brazil see it. People in medieval Europe reported the exact same thing. They called it the incubus. A demon that sits on you while you sleep. Insidious takes this real phenomenon and asks a question. What if those hallucinations aren't just hallucinations? What if something is actually there? What if during sleep paralysis, the barrier between our world and the further gets thin? What if consciousness can actually slip into that other place? This is the genius of the film's mythology. It doesn't deny the science. It builds on it. Elise explains that some people are naturally gifted at astral projection. Their consciousness can leave their body easily. Josh is one of those people. But he doesn't know it. He thinks he's just having nightmares. He thinks he's just experiencing sleep paralysis like everyone else. But he's not. He's actually going somewhere. He's actually traveling. The films show us the further as a landscape. A geography. It's not in his head. It's a real place that exists on the other side of consciousness. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to find your way back. Your body is still asleep at home. But your consciousness is lost in an infinite labyrinth of darkness and twisted architecture and things that hunger. What makes this so effective is that we can't prove it's wrong. Sleep paralysis is real. Astral projection experiences are reported by thousands of people. Dreams feel real when you're having them. So Insidious takes the borderline between science and the supernatural and blurs it completely. It makes you wonder. It makes you question what's possible. It makes you afraid to fall asleep. And by the time you finish the first film, you're not just scared of nightmares. You're scared of what might be real. When Insidious hit theaters in 2010, nobody expected it to become what it became. It was a low-budget film. Around $3 million. Tiny by horror standards. But it made $190 million worldwide. That's not just success. That's cultural impact. And James Wan and Jason Blum figured out something that the rest of Hollywood was still trying to understand. Blumhouse Productions became famous for one thing: making horror films cheaply that make enormous amounts of money. Paranormal Activity, The Purge, Sinister. All of them low budget. All of them massive hits. But Insidious was different. Because Insidious didn't just make money. It created a universe. A mythology that could expand. A world where sequels didn't feel like cash grabs. They felt like continuation. The formula is actually simple. You take a small budget. You take genuine scares. You build a mythology so compelling that audiences want to know more. Then you make the next film and expand it. Insidious did this perfectly. The first film is about Josh getting trapped. The second film is a prequel that goes deeper. It shows us the history. It shows us how this curse started. It answers questions from the first film while creating new ones. By the third film, you're not just watching a horror movie anymore. You're watching a complete mythology unfold. You understand the rules. You know the further. You know the creatures. You know the mythology. And somehow, knowing all of that makes it scarier, not less scary. Because now you understand the stakes. You understand what's at risk. You understand that this isn't random. It's a system. It's a cosmos. James Wan is a visual storyteller. He doesn't need massive budgets to create atmosphere. He uses shadows. He uses silence. He uses the space between things. Watch Insidious and you'll notice something. There's a lot of time where nothing is happening. The camera is still. The music is minimal. And that emptiness is more terrifying than any jump scare. Your mind fills the emptiness with dread. The trilogy structure also worked because each film could stand alone, but together they told a bigger story. You could watch Insidious and get a complete experience. But if you wanted to know more, you could watch Insidious Chapter 2 and get the backstory. Then Chapter 3 and see how it all connects. The mythology deepens with each film. The mystery expands. The scope gets bigger. Blumhouse understood something crucial about modern audiences. We don't want to be tricked. We want to be trusted. If you give us a genuine mystery and then actually answer it, we'll follow you anywhere. We'll watch 3 films. We'll buy tickets. We'll tell our friends. Insidious did that. It respected its audience enough to build a real world with real rules and real consequences. And that respect is why the trilogy still matters today. Years later, people still talk about Insidious. They still feel it. They still can't sleep. Because it's not just a franchise. It's a complete work of art. 3 films that together create something bigger than any single film could achieve. This is the kind of storytelling that stays with you. Make sure you're following along, because what we discover next completely changes how you see the whole trilogy. Insidious works on a level most horror films never reach. It's not just about being scared. It's about understanding that there's a technology to the supernatural. A methodology. A system. And that's what makes it truly unsettling. When Elise encounters the further, she doesn't treat it like magic. She treats it like science. She uses tools. She uses knowledge. She understands the rules of that world the way an engineer understands a building. This shifts something in your brain. You stop thinking this is supernatural and start thinking this is just science we don't understand yet. This is the power of what James Wan created. He took the supernatural and made it systematic. He showed us that spiritual experiences follow rules. That consciousness can be mapped like territory. That there are barriers and thresholds and things that hunt. This isn't religion. This isn't mysticism. This is technology that operates on spiritual principles instead of physical ones. The red door in Insidious is the perfect example. It's not magical. It's technological. It's a gateway. A portal. It has properties. It functions a certain way. You can open it from one side but not the other. You can pass through it. You can get stuck there. It's a tool. A mechanism. And treating spiritual concepts as technology makes them feel real in a way that pure supernaturalism never could. Our deepest fears are actually quite simple. We fear losing control. We fear the unknown. We fear that there are things in this world we don't understand. And we fear that those things might be aware of us. Might be hunting us. Might know things about us that we don't know about ourselves. Insidious taps directly into those fears. The further itself represents something primal. It's the place where lost things go. Where broken things end up. Where consciousness goes when it has nowhere else to be. It's not heaven. It's not hell. It's something in between. And that undefined nature is what makes it frightening. You can't prepare for something you don't understand. You can't fight it. You can't negotiate with it. You can only hope to escape it. And then there are the creatures. The red-faced demon isn't just evil for the sake of it. It has purpose. It hunts Josh specifically. It knows his family history. It's been waiting for him. That transforms a random monster into something with agency and intention. Something that represents a real threat, not just a jump scare. What Insidious really shows us is that the supernatural operates like everything else in nature. There are predators and prey. There are rules and hierarchies. There are territories and thresholds. The only difference is that these rules operate on a level we can't normally perceive. They're hidden. They're behind a veil. And sometimes that veil gets thin. Sometimes someone slips through. And sometimes they can't get back. The trilogy explores what happens when that veil tears. What happens when the barriers between worlds break down. What happens when something from the further decides to cross over. The answers get darker with each film. The Insidious trilogy doesn't end with a resolution. It ends with a choice. And that's the real horror. Because by the time you finish the third film, you understand that Josh's story isn't over. The curse isn't broken. The further isn't sealed. The cycle just continues. And that's what James Wan wanted you to realize. Throughout the trilogy, we watch Josh navigate the further. We watch his son Dalton face the same gift that his father has. We watch Elise sacrifice herself to help them. We watch the past unfold. We see how generational trauma works. How fear gets passed down through families. How some people are born with doors open inside them that other people will never see. But the real message is darker than that. The trilogy shows us that consciousness itself might be more fragile than we think. Your mind can slip away. Your consciousness can wander into places you can't return from. The things that hunt in the further aren't supernatural intrusions into our world. They're a natural part of a larger cosmos that we've simply never been trained to perceive. James Wan built this mythology with such precision that it raises a question that haunts you long after the film's end. If astral projection is real, if the further exists, if consciousness can separate from the body, then what does that mean for the nature of reality itself? What does it mean for death? What does it mean for all the unexplained phenomena that people report but science dismisses? The trilogy never answers these questions directly. It doesn't need to. Because by showing you a world with rules and geography and creatures and hierarchies, it plants a seed. A question. A doubt about what we think we know. Insidious Chapter 3 ends with a particular kind of dread. Not the dread of immediate danger, but the dread of understanding. The dread of knowing that the world is bigger and stranger and darker than you believed. And there's no going back to ignorance. Once you see the further, you can't unsee it. Once you know that consciousness can slip away, you can't stop wondering when yours might do the same. The genius of the trilogy is that it doesn't provide comfort. It provides knowledge. And knowledge of darkness is sometimes worse than darkness itself. Because now you understand what you're afraid of. You understand the mechanism. You understand the rules. And you realize that understanding doesn't protect you. It just makes you aware of how vulnerable you really are. This is what separates Insidious from other horror franchises. It's not just trying to scare you. It's trying to teach you something about reality. It's showing you a mythology so complete, so coherent, so internally consistent that it feels like documentation rather than fiction. The trilogy ends where it began, with a question. And that question is still waiting for an answer.